So thank you very much for that introduction. It was oddly entertaining. So we're here on behalf of Samsung Internet. We're going to be talking about how to be physical and immersed in a web browser. It's going to be a combination, and it's going to be kind of like an introduction on how do you get started with WebXR technology and web Bluetooth technology. Now, as I guess there's no introductions needed after that super amazing introductions. We work for the Samsung Internet team. For those of you that are not aware of Samsung Internet, it is a Chromium-based web browser. And actually, as a fun fact, Samsung is the second largest contributor to the open source Chromium project. It's what we call an evergreen browser, so it constantly gets updated with the latest and greatest web technologies like progressive web apps, gamepad API, speech recognition, and the two technologies that actually bring us today here, which are WebXR and Web Bluetooth. And just as another fact, it's available for Android, L, or higher devices, so you do not have to have a Samsung device in order to be using the browser itself. The question here might be, why should you care about this browser? Basically, it's the fourth largest mobile web browser in the world. If you consider certain regions like Europe and North America, we have the third place in market share. So if you're creating certain content or certain experiences, web Bluetooth, WebVR, or any other type of web experience, then you might want to make sure that you're testing, because there are a lot of users that are going to be using this browser. But enough with that. We're going to get now to the topic itself, because there's something very interesting that's been happening.
And it's the physical and digital worlds are merging. This is a big Uber trend that we're starting to see, and we're just at the beginning of. And it's made up, this big trend, of a few key technologies, including,
of course, virtual reality. And in order to kick off the presentation, we want to show you this graphic. It was pointed out by a friend of ours a couple of weeks ago, in which you can see the Gartner hype cycle for emerging technologies. This is last year. There on the tail, you can see VR. It's kind of like in the just going up the slope of enlightenment. This means that we're almost getting there towards being considered a proper tech. If you look at the hype cycle for this year, though, something that's quite interesting is that VR is no longer there. It's kind of like outside of the hype cycle, and from a certain perspective, you can argue what John Root is arguing is that it's already considered a tech. It's not a big tech. It's not a massively successful tech, but it can also be. It can already.
It's graduated.
It's kind of like graduated, yeah, and it's no longer inflated or deflated by the hype that is kind of like around all these type of technologies. But definitely, it's graduated, and we're seeing more and more content.
Yeah, and that content isn't just games, which might be the first thing that we think of when we think about virtual reality and how it's been going more mainstream. But there's a wide variety of things that people have been using it for. For example, for digital creativity, for immersing yourself in meditative experiences, or for overcoming trauma and things that might help people psychologically, for architecture. And there's even an example here on the bottom left that is a memory palace, which is designed to help you remember things by going through it in an actual 3D environment. And also for learning and training. This is LearnBright, which is a remote training platform, remote education platform, and people can join in and learn from teachers in a 3D space in virtual reality. And it may be that my clicker has stopped working, but it may be also that we think, well, we're not seeing VR used every day, day to day. My friends, my colleagues, I'm not seeing them wearing a headset. But actually, many of the things that we use day to day have been created via virtual reality. They're a product of virtual reality. And so this quote says that just about every vehicle we've occupied in the last couple of decades would have been prototyped in VR. These things are happening in the industry behind the scenes. Also, another example is Walmart. This was a headline just recently. They're putting 17,000 VR headsets in their stores for training purposes. So again, we're seeing how these are quite big numbers, and it's being used in ways that we might not first think. Try.
And then, of course, moving from VR, we can start thinking about augmented and mixed reality, in which there has been, in the last couple of years, a lot of developments in this area. Whether you can start thinking about head-based AR, so things like the HoloLens, things like the Magic Leap, or things like the North Star prototype that is being developed by the by the folks at Leap Motion, or mobile-based, which is probably the one that we're most used to, depending on if you're an Android with ARCore or ARKit on iOS. There's definitely something that is going on in the industry.
Yeah, so let's have a quick look at the things that ARCore and ARKit can give us. So with our regular mobile devices, these let us have the ability to track positions of things in 3D space just through our camera, detect surfaces like tables and walls, estimate the light in the scene, which is useful for rendering our own 3D objects in that space so it looks like they fit in better. And with ARKit 2, things like object detection and having persistent and shareable experiences with other people. So here's just a couple of examples of mobile-based AR that I really like. This one is by Sotheby's, and it lets you take a suite of furniture that you might buy if you can afford such a set, and place it in your own room so you can see how it fits, how it looks in the real environment around you. And this one I like as a not very good golfer, because if I need a bit of help with my putt, I can just wave my phone at the green and it will read the surfaces and be able to help me line up that putt so I can get it in the hole.
And all of these technologies, the more time passes, we're going to be seeing more and more concepts. So whether it's VR, AR, MR, we're referring to them in this umbrella term of XR. Call it what you may, extended reality, cross reality. The important thing now is that there's more that is coming to the traditional web browsing experience, not only in the immersive side, but also in sites that are related to the way that we can connect the physical world.
Yeah, and that brings us on to another technology that is helping this trend of merging the physical and digital worlds, the Internet of Things. And when we think about IoT, we might first think about these devices that are always connected to the internet by themselves. But another part of this trend that we'd like to highlight is there are also many smart devices out there that we can connect to from our phones using something like Bluetooth. In fact, there are 10 million Bluetooth-enabled devices shipping every day. So this is a massive opportunity. And if you were to look at something like Kickstarter and to have a look at some of the devices that are cropping up there, you might notice that there's smart everything now. There's smart garden irrigation, smart care devices for cats, and smart snoring solutions. Meaning that everything is becoming controllable. Our smartphone is becoming a remote control for the real world around us.
So this kind of begs the question, what if we can combine the immersive technologies with the Internet of Things?
That would be pretty cool, because XR can help us to understand our big data. We can understand all of this data around us better if we can visualize it better. As Jaron Lanier said, VR is amazing at conveying complexity with lucidity. As in, there's nothing more natural for us as human beings to inhabit a 4D world, 3D space and time. And if we can convey complex information in that format, that's the most natural way for us to be able to get to grips with it.
And some of the examples that you give that you can think about are quite interesting. They merge, for example, this one over here. It's a tower bridge made of Lego. It has certain IoT devices and sensors that can point out if the bridge is open, if it's closed, what's, for example, temperature, and many other factors. And the thing is that you can actually visualize and get a real sense of the state of the physical object in the web browser. And the way that we're doing this is by using immersive technology, so you can get a full sense of the state of the physical object. And in a similar way, it's interesting because then it allows you to bridge certain experiences. This is from an exhibition that we did in Paris last year, if I'm not mistaken, where we had this dress. It's a collaboration that we did with a fashion designer. And the dress itself was connecting to the cloud. It was getting some data, and then it was lighting up some LEDs that were on its tail based on the noise pollution. Again, something that we can get from sensor data. We created a WebVR experience that would take the same data and would create some visuals in a way that the noisier the part of the world where we were getting the data from, then the noisier and kind of like more crowded with certain elements the WebVR experience was. And what was interesting is that the dress itself was even broadcasting the URL to the experience through a physical web beacon. So as long as you were probably around 70 to 80 meters near the dress, you would get a notification that if you allowed it, because remember that one of the important things in the web is privacy. So if you allowed it, then you can pretty much open the web browser and you would be already tapping and interacting with a virtual scene, all without even having a headset.
So that's a bit about virtual reality and how that can work well with IoT. Also, augmented reality. Augmented reality can enhance the real world with key data and controls for those items in real time. I think this is shown well from this demo from Leap Motion using the North Star headset, which has built-in hand and figure tracking, and it's connected with these smart lamps, meaning that to control them, you just have to wave your finger in the air and use a gesture. It's like superpowers.
So then, of course, again, the big question is, what about the web? Because some of the examples that we've been talking about are native, some are web, but what about specifically the web? Well, it turns out that the web is the most wide-reaching platform. As long as you have a modern web browser, you can pretty much feed most of these experiences to your users. If you need another reason why you would want to target the web, then...
And it's familiar to many of us as well. The top 3 most popular technologies in the Stack Overflow developer survey this year were JavaScript, HTML, and CSS.
And the interesting fact here is that there's a close alignment in the technology, in the choices of professional developers and the developer population overall. So imagine if we can actually enable every single web developer to become a VR developer. There are definitely some benefits that you can start thinking about. You know, the web lets you dive right in. And there are several new types of workflows that we can start envisioning. Think about just using your desktop browser, going to Wikipedia to get some information about, in this case, for example, the Burj Khalifa. You know that it's 828 meters. But what is 828 meters? It's not something, you know, that conveys any emotional meaning. It's a data. It's just a number. But if you can embed a VR experience in which if you have a headset, you put it on and you immediately go like, whoa, this building is massive, because you're getting a one-on-one representation with the building itself, then you can start seeing how we can use immersive technologies in order to enhance learning journeys of most of the experiences that are already present in the web. Because it's not about rebuilding the whole web, it's about enhancing the web with new technologies that are coming in. And on this topic, then, we can start thinking about, okay, so progressive enhancement. We've been doing it for a while, and we've been doing it adapting desktop sites to mobile sites. Let's think about how do we treat progressive enhancement in a whole new dimension. What type of experiences do I want to enable, and how can I enable these experiences to run in 3 degrees of freedom, 6 degrees of freedom, 0 degrees of freedom experiences? And more than that, can I hook up, for example, gamepad controllers? More than that, can I hook up with web Bluetooth devices. So think about Sphero, think about drones, think about anything that you can plug in with Bluetooth that you can now enable as a controller in your web application. So for this is where we kind of introduced the concept of WebXR, and I would like to see some hands. I can barely see some hands, but who knows or has heard about VR in the browser? Okay, a few. That's quite interesting. The specification itself, the WebXR one, it's being worked on at the moment as we speak. Well, probably not as we speak, they're probably sleeping at the moment. But it pretty much describes support for accessing VR and AR devices, including sensors and head-mounted displays from the web. This means that from JavaScript, you're going to be able to get all the information from, for example, the pose of a controller, the pose of a headset, the rendering frame that you're putting in a display that's inside a VR headset. And this has huge implications, not only in terms of what we were listening before about how, we're used to desktop browsers, we have mobile browsers, and now we're seeing this rise of new browsers. Think about Oculus browser, think about Google Chrome for Daydream, Samsung Internet for Gear VR, Super Medium on desktop platforms. How you can actually integrate the browser itself into your experiences. There are some browsers like Samsung Internet for Gear VR in which you can programmatically change the skybox that's surrounding you to make it match your branding or any image that you would like to put on your website. There's also this new concept of the new workflows. So maybe you're browsing this web page on your phone. You take the phone, you put it on a headset, Daydream, Google, Samsung Internet for Gear VR. The browser should be smart enough to be able to make this process as seamless for the user. So the user puts it, you might be navigating any social network, you run into a 180 or 360 picture, you take your phone, you put it into a headset probably like this. The headset already knows where you were, so you're already immersed in that, and once you take it off, then you switch back to the normal browser. These type of experiences are valuable when we're thinking about video as well, when we're talking about video. Can the browser really understand already 360 content, 360 video that's going to be displayed, and what are the formats that 360 video comes with? And one other, which is very interesting, is the new access. So we now have space. Can we think about about putting some elements, HTML DOM elements in space? Would it make sense to try to enable CSS transformations, CSS 3D transformations that actually go in and outside of the frame that you have? This is an example, and there have been many experiments, Samsung, Google, some PhDs as well I've seen. This is an example from the Lens VR team in Bulgaria, and I find it very interesting when you start thinking, how can you make a web page just break free from the flatness that there is? And while all of this sounds a bit like the future, the important thing is that while WebXR is coming later this decade, WebVR is already here, and there are already some uses from car configurators. Toyota in Australia is using it. Ford is using it for its Explorer line. To Google did one with LCD sound system, which is quite dope. You go into the headset and you get different points of view depending on how you're experiencing this content. Again, thinking about the progressive enhancement. We collaborated with BBC and Good Boy in a game where you fly the TARDIS through space, and even popular clones of applications like Google Tilt Brush, the A-frame, the Mozilla A-Painter, which has the added advantage that you can just take your creation and share it with a link. So it does have all the advantages of the web. And one more related to WebVR before we jump into augmented reality. The support. We can see this is WebVR support. I believe it's up to date. You can see that independent of the hardware that you're thinking on developing for, the operating system and the browser, you have a combination that allows you to get to your users. And if you are, if you're thinking about the big elephant in the room, which is the iOS devices, they are actually supported through the WebXR WebVR polyfill. So independent of you have users that are using an iPhone, they will be able to see the WebVR experience as well.
Yeah, so that's a bit about WebVR, and WebAR is not quite so far along that standardization and support line, but it is coming too, and we can also experiment with it now. In fact, we've had camera access on the web since about 2012 with the Get User Media API. So that's let us take a camera feed and display it in a web page. But of course, to do augmented reality properly, we need to go a step beyond that. We're going on this trend now from computers with cameras to computers with eyes that can see. We need to not just take that camera feed, but to understand what is actually in that scene. And we're starting to be able to do that on the web. And here's a simple example that Diego will share.
So this one, again, using camera feed. This is with AR.js. It's using the camera feed. It's using marker detection. And you can see how it's actually reacting and interacting with the cursor that you have. So again, how you can combine physical and virtual environments together.
But what about going beyond that, using some of these new capabilities that we have with our mobile devices, making the most of ARCore and ARKit? How can we combine that with the web? Well, that's on the road to becoming a thing as well. We already have some experimental browsers that we can try this out in on iOS and on Android. And there are libraries from Google and Mozilla based on the popular 3GS 3D library, and also based on A-Frame, the popular 3D and virtual reality library, that actually let us hook into those capabilities, ARCore and ARKit, on supported devices. So that's pretty neat.
So of course everyone's now wondering, what about if we combine web and IoT? And
yeah, that's
I'm
the next thing, isn't it? Well, we also are combining these in interesting ways in web and in the web standards too. The Web of Things is a developing W3C web standard, and it's about providing a universal system for talking to things and for things to talk to each other. And it's all based around these things, these devices having their own URLs. People have called it the application layer of the Internet of Things.
One thing that's probably interesting that I would like to add is W3C has been looking into how can we bridge, let's say, the network layer as well. And with the kind of like upcoming 5G standard next year, it's quite interesting to see, how can we, let's say, query network slices? How can we query the performance of the network itself in order to virtual reality and IoT are two of the verticals that 5G is being developed for. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, and Mozilla have a project based on the Web of Things called Project Things, and it's something that we've been collaborating with them on as well. And the neat thing about this is it gives us an ability to set up our own home, for example, with smart devices, have it all based on web standards, have a gateway running that we can access from outside our home, but in a secure way in order to communicate with our devices using web standards. And it's not just the traditional IoT that we think is really interesting, but also there's Web Bluetooth. I might ask again a show of hands. Does anyone know that Web Bluetooth exists and you can do Bluetooth on the web? Okay, great. Fair few of you as well.
Is it more or less than XR?
I think maybe just slightly less.
Yeah, I'm flattered now. It's
so this is a thing too. And Web Bluetooth is, well, it's not very far on the standards track yet. It's more that is in browsers. It is in certain browsers already, but it's a developing specification, and it allows web pages to be the central device, as in the kind of controller for a peripheral device, which could be all sorts of things. One of those smart devices in your home, or some interesting things we'll see later as well. And it's primarily for Bluetooth low energy devices. One thing we should note, because we are always conscious of security first and foremost on the web, is that obviously it wouldn't be great if any web page could start accessing your Bluetooth devices around you, so that's not the case. It requires the user action. It requires the user to select a device from the pairing prompt and choose to pair with it, and web Bluetooth sites or apps have to be served over HTTPS. I mentioned that it's supported in a few browsers already, so it has support in Chromium-based browsers, Samsung Internet, Chrome, and Opera, and this is available in most operating systems. It also recently came to Windows in Chrome Beta, and we're going to hopefully show that to you later. But here's one demo I made earlier to fly my Parrot mini drone. Because I thought it'd be pretty cool to just be able to do that from a website. So I can go to WebDrone, the URL, and I can tap and take off, and I can fly it around my room. And then the neat thing is there's a flip button, so you can press that, and it does a nice little flip there if you can see it. And that's all just from a web page. One more example that we made earlier, our colleague Joe worked on this. It's an example that combines a VR controller, which is a Bluetooth low energy controller, with your phone, and it lets you use it for curling a hedgehog down a track. And you can do this in virtual reality, and using Web Bluetooth, we can hook into a different kind of controller that we wouldn't ordinarily have been able to use on that web page.
So I think it would be interesting to see a demo. We were walking yesterday through the market square, and we ran into this very cool tree. I don't know if you've seen it. It's kind of like looks kind of out of place, a bit tropical. And we kind of ran into a parrot, a macaw. And we kind of recorded this because we wanted to share this with you. So we're going to show you the demo now. Probably need some help from someone from the audience. So if there's any volunteers, please come forward.
If we could have one person come up on stage. Yeah, thank you.
And
so it's going to use this Nordic thingy device, which we have here is like just a little cube. It's a quite affordable multi-sensor IoT device, and we can connect to it with Bluetooth. So I'll hand that to you for now. Take care of it. Thank you. And we'll see more in a minute.
Okay, so this is real footage. I cannot see the mouse. This is real footage from yesterday at Market Square. We saw this bird, and just probably in order to explain a bit more, let's connect it.
Okay.
Let's explain what's the process in which you would connect the Nordic 52 thingy to the browser.
So I'm going to press the connect button here, and this is running in Chrome Beta, right?
Yeah, this is.
It needs to be secure.
Oh,
this is a good demo of the fact that it needs
Beta.
to be HTTPS.
Yeah, and I think this is not Chrome Beta.
Okay.
You probably need to open it in.
Do you want to flip it over?
Yeah, let me see. So this is where you pray to the demo gods, right?
Yeah.
So let me just open. There you go. Right browser, and let's see.
Okay, let's give it a try. So this time when we click connect, is it this way?
Yeah, should be that one. No, put it there on the screen there, and drag and drop.
Can't see it.
Let me see. Okay, so as we were seeing, let me just see if I can see the mouse. Oh God, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So you can see the scene here. Market Square, it was raining yesterday apparently. Lovely. Now, Peter's going to connect.
Let's try connect, yeah. So this is going to call the Web Bluetooth API, which is our inbuilt browser API, and now it's scanning. It's scanning for devices. You didn't press anything, right?
No, I didn't.
No. So it's turned red for some reason.
Yeah.
I might switch it off and on again, because that's always a good idea, eh?
That's not good.
Sorry to doubt you. I'll just put it here again. Let's see. What we want to see is that blue. That's good. And then hopefully it should pick it up. Of course, this being a live demo, it might take longer than expected. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can see the mouse. Okay. So
it's come up with our thingy, which is the name of the device.
So pair.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now we should start seeing some data coming through.
Because I think it's on the side.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, let me just... Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses, so trying to get the cursor here. I'm going to put it in a way that it should be to the dark side. There you go. You can see the information, right, coming from the device itself, being streamed from Bluetooth. Yeah.
So
temperature.
If it's a bit small there, we've got the temperature, humidity, air quality. We've also got color values and battery we might be seeing in a moment too. So this is all coming from that device in your hand. Now, do you, sir, happen to have a phone with a light on it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Could you switch your flashlight on, please? And then if you could try, while you're showing that, holding it underneath. Now we see the scene has brightened up. That is because we have connected the light sensor on here to the background of our virtual reality scene.
Yeah. So you can see, works.
Wow.
And there's
one other thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you might
thing.
like to press the button by clicking on the whole top of the device.
Wait, probably.
Oh, I think we need sound.
There is sound. Or we can this one. Let me see if it's... Okay.
Oh yeah.
So you can
there we go.
there you go.
So the parrot is reacting to your button pressing there. I think it's a happy squawk, right? He's appreciating your button pressing there. Thank you. Yeah.
Live recording from yesterday, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure as well.
Okay, I'm taking it with me.
Thank you.
So there you go. You can see how you combine virtuality now. If we put it in a headset, I have a headset there. You can take the headset, put it on. You're going to be in the tree. You're going to be like a mini person in the tree. But you can kind of more or less get an idea of how you can integrate physical devices with web examples. So having said that, let's get back to the presentation. Is there still a presentation? Let's see.
So there we have it.
Yeah.
That's been our talk and our
Thank
demo.
you very much.
Thank you.